Have you ever asked yourself, am I destined to do this for the rest of my life? Is this the only path I could take? Can I choose to change my career this late in life? There was a time I had to ask myself those very questions. It was a pivotal point in my life, but only the first of many, where I needed to empower myself to make a change necessary to find fulfillment, joy, and happiness, and become truly present with those most important to me. The time we have on this earth is limited. Wouldn't you want to be happier with the time you have? Maybe it's time for a change. This is the Buckets of Change podcast. Hey there, everyone. I am your host, Nick Goblirsch, and thank you for taking the time to download, listen, or subscribe to my brand new podcast. For those of you that have been with me for the Paint for Thought podcast, thank you. It's been a while since I've done a Paint for Thought show, and there has been a lot of happenings on my side in another life transition or career transition that I'm making. And if you follow me on the socials, you already know what that is, but for those of you that don't, I'm going to use this podcast as more of an introductory podcast. This is the first time I've actually changed a podcast mid-process. I usually start them brand new, but I had no idea that I could just switch it over. So this is the Buckets of Change podcast, and this is something that's going to be a little different, slightly different, I think, than the Paint for Thought podcast. For those of you that are unaware, or for those of you that have seen me speak and you are taking the time to check out this episode, I'm Nick Goblirsch. I am currently a professional house painter in the process of changing careers and a little career pivot and becoming a professional speaker and career transition coach. And prior to me painting houses in 2019, I was an HR executive for 20 years, so I was in the HR space. And I decided, rather than waiting another 10 years in order to possibly seek out or pursue another life pivot where I could pursue something that I enjoy and then I could serve others, my wife and I, Megan, decided that now is better than any time. So I'm working with an agent now, and it's great, and coming up with this whole framework called the Buckets of Change, and there'll be many episodes in the future where I'll talk a little bit more about that and what that is. But I've been thinking about what to do differently. I know for the past episodes on this feed, the Paint for Thought podcast, which was an extension of my iHeart painting brand, and sharing a little bit more of life's lessons that I learned in this whole process of life and all the things I learned in following my passion for painting homes. Rather than just having me on the show, I think this show would be much more beneficial for those of you that are really trying to understand if change is in your future, or now may be a good time to make a change, whether it be in your career or position or in life in general, or even at the organizations that you serve. I think it would be important to bring individuals that can share their transitions and their stories. I'll have plenty of time to be able to do that. And if you're stumbling across this, feel free to listen to the last 24, 25 episodes of the Paint for Thought podcast, get to know a little bit more about me. But really, I want to make sure that I can connect with other professionals, individuals, spiritual people, influencers, anyone out there who I'm close to. And through this venture, through this Buckets of Change and speaking pivot that I'm doing, that I'll be able to interact with individuals that'll have stories to tell about how they made significant life decisions to make change in their lives that were scary, and how they mitigated those obstacles and all the things that they had to navigate around in order to make that vision that they had of what they wanted to be now a reality. And this is going to be interesting because you are going to experience an evolution that is in the making. Like that's what's so interesting. Sometimes when we see people change, they get a new job, they try a new career, they move somewhere, they completely reinvent themselves. We don't see the process. We usually see the end result. And I've made many decisions to change what I have done in my life between early in my 20s to then pursuing an HR career and becoming very successful at that, and then deciding that I no longer wanted to be in that space anymore because I wasn't passionate about it anymore, but I wanted to pursue something else, which then led me to painting houses. I'm able to share that and use this type of medium to share that with you. And I think it's amazing when you can see the process. I'm fascinated with the process of change. I like seeing people evolve because that's really where the lessons come in. It's getting to the end, the finish line is really, that's it, you're done. But watching someone change and evolve and fail and learn from their mistakes and apply that knowledge and pay it forward like I plan to do with all of you, it's an amazing experience. And I think I want this podcast, the Buckets of Change podcast, to be exactly that. And in the future, I will have guests on the show, people that I've actually am connecting with in my process of building my framework and this whole different side of me as an entrepreneur, that I'd love to have them on the show because they have spectacular stories to tell. Speaking of which, which was exciting because it makes it more real. I'm sure this show will post very soon. I don't know the frequency of this podcast. It will be at least once a week or at least every other week. But once we gain momentum and you have an expectation of when you want to listen, I will make sure that it gets to you as fast as possible. So if you are listening to this, and I'll share this on my socials, make sure you hit the subscribe button so these shows actually hit your podcast feed and download automatically every time I post them. But recently I was able to connect, which I hadn't been on someone else's podcast in a really, really long time. I was on a podcast called the No Problem Parenting Podcast. You should definitely check it out. I think it's amazing. Podcasting is so cool because there's so many niche topics. And Jackie Finneman is a parenting expert, and she has individuals that are on that help parents really understand how they can do things differently in order to better parent their children. And I was on her podcast, and I shared a little bit of my story about when I struggled being present with my wife, Megan, and my kids, Abby and Nathan, later in my HR career, because I really thought that my whole job was to keep a job and be successful at this job, because without it, I couldn't provide for my family. And I walked her through that process. And ironically, she had the same process on a previous episode. But make sure you check out her podcast. I don't know when my episode will be posting, but I will post it on my socials. I think right now I'm still using at iHeartPaintingNJ on Instagram and Facebook. I need to create I'm doing all these things, guys. Facebook page. I might even do TikTok videos, the whole thing. Again, it's just another opportunity to be creative, because as an art school graduate or an art degree graduate, I get to use that degree. And be creative, because you're deep down, you're always the same person you've ever been, and you'll always enjoy what you've always enjoyed, especially from your childhood. And hopefully you can find an opportunity to be able to expand on that experience and possibly make a living doing that, which is something I really want to help people out there. Maybe you figure that out, because life becomes a lot more happier and joyful when you're able to do that and share that with everyone. I'm actually home right now. I'm squeezing this in. My son sounds like he's struggling on the soccer field, Megan told me, and my daughter Abby's there too. So I wanted to just quickly record this and get this out for all of you. Like I said, thank you for taking the time to listen to this. So much more Buckets of Change coming. The show, I think that, again, that's going to be that format. I really want to make sure other people are sharing their stories. And if I cannot get one or somebody on the show, or a guest on the show, someone that has a story that they can share with you, I'd love to continue to share my stories as well, and some of the framework that you can follow, things that you can do if you're at a point in your life right now where you're like, you know what? I don't know. Like I said in the intro, I don't know if this is the path I was meant to take, because you only have, like I said, so much time here, that wouldn't you want to make sure that you can pursue more of the things that make you happy? And that's what I want to do for you. So guys, thank you for listening to this quick introductory episode. I don't even know if I'm going to number this episode 1 or 25, 26. I don't know where that is in the chain, but I think I want to continue to use my voice to be able to connect with you as a listener. And again, I'm very, very grateful you took the time to listen to this, and I hope to connect with you and talk to you in each and every episode of the Buckets of Change podcast. Guys, You can follow me on my socials and my emails. Feel free to, if you'd like to reach out. At this point, usually I'd have a lot more to say, and I would hope that I was giving you a lot more that you want to connect. But as the show goes on, there's always contact and connection info in the show notes. You guys have an amazing day no matter what you're doing, and I will talk to you very, very soon.